Hi everyone, and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global Podcast. I'm Kirsty McGowan. I'm here with Carlos Casanova. Hi Carlos.
Hey Kirsty, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. And Charlie Betts. Hi Charlie.
Kirsty, how are you?
Good, nice to have you here again, Charlie. And today we're going to be talking to Peter Johnson from CXI, or as he tells us, we can call it Sexy. Hi Peter, nice to have you on board.
Thank you for having me. Hi everyone.
Welcome, Peter.
Welcome, Peter, and it's great to meet you. I've been perusing some of your very interesting blogs and thought leadership, and of course, the first thing that comes up looking at your company and the way you are approaching the market is this idea of trichromatic leadership, did you call it? Perhaps you could introduce us a little bit to your thinking here, as it seems so foundational to how you're approaching things.
Okay, in a nutshell, I should warn you, I'm long-winded by nature, but I'll do my best to keep it brief. Trichromatic is thus named because I assign a particular element of organizational function to a color. So we have the idea of control assigned to the color red, the idea of autonomy or star freedom assigned to the color blue, and individual human values assigned to the color green. Now, the point I make is that ITSM, through its history, is based on methods of control or organizational theories of control. If you look at ITSM in depth, you'll find evidence of Frederick Taylor's scientific management in there, which is a system of kind of control, and you'll also find systems thinking from the 1950s, which is also cybernetics, measurement, regulation, control also. Control is good, it's very useful, it's given us reliability and stability, but those are early 20th century ideas. In the latter half of the 20th century, organizational theorists started to look more to complex systems. And in complex systems, we have ideas of freedom, of freely operating agents. So I wanted to bring that into the way we think about IT service, and that's what the blue of autonomy is. It's freeing your staff from the processes and the targets. We're not saying get rid of them. It's called trichromatic because we need all three. You need control, but I'm arguing that we need more autonomy, more freedom for people to allow them to be responsive and flexible. And finally, in order to free your staff and not get the destruction that many fear would happen if you freed your staff, you also need to understand the values of the people who are working in ITSM, because values are the driver of what people are going to do with their freedom. I can give you a concrete example, but I think that's enough for the moment.
Okay, very good. Certainly some topics that are also resonating a lot in the Agile community lately.
Yes, indeed. And it's great because there's a lot of change approaching ITSM at the moment. There's a whole digital transformation thing, and what I love about digital transformation is the focus is on CX and UX. It's on the customer experience, it's on the user experience. So you're building apps and services that are really nice for the end user to use, but also, you know, IT service in the digitally transformed world is going to need to fit in with that and offer a service that is really customer friendly. It's not in the service catalog, not the process says no, not the SLA says 36 hours when the person wants it now. That's why I think we have to shift a little bit more to be more flexible and to be more agile.
Well, Kirsty and Carlos, I'm noticing a theme here. We talked about this at BMC with the UX and service design aspects.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, just probably not even a half hour ago, I was listening to a radio report that I can't remember who did the study, but we all, especially us with kids, think that the attention span is pretty much shot on this generation of kids because of iPads and all the electronic stuff. And what they found actually was that the attention span is not actually any different. They use the same methods that they've done testing since 1920 and whatnot. What they found is the threshold to boredom and the willingness to just jump to the next topic is what appears to be more of an attention deficit issue, and it's really not. They're saying once they're focused on stuff, it's no different than kids and generations from past. It's just that we expected a certain level of boredom in our day, and the current generation is basically saying, hey, I don't have to, I'm moving on. So I'm kind of curious how, when you were talking about the blue side of this, that freedom, it almost seems to like fit right into enabling, hey, I'm bored, I have the freedom now to maybe go, I'm bored with following the predefined process, that's got this rigor, and it's just kind of like monotonous going forward. But now I have essentially freedom to say, I know what the end result is supposed to be and how I need to get there and the controls that are in place. But you know what, let me just kind of get there in my own way, because I have certain experiences that maybe get there a little better, faster, easier, or more interesting for me to get there. Is that sort of, not piecing it together in a matter of 3.5 minutes worth of an interview that I heard on the radio half hour ago and your description 2 minutes ago?
That's exactly it. So a good way to think about it is, the service agent. Think of the service interaction. Think about it in a corporate environment, you have an IT service. Someone out in the business requires something from IT. They approach the service giver, first line support, whoever that is, however your organization is structured. That person, I argue, should have that freedom to be able to make that call. No longer, well, the SLA says 36 hours, the process I've been given is to log it and then pass it on to this person, or do whatever. That person should use all of their experiences. Hey, I know a bit about data, I know a bit about SQL Server. And ultimately, I believe we need to get to a situation where the first line is way more than log and flog. I'm thinking about a reimagining of first line IT service, where it becomes a kind of collaborative space where people from the business come along with business problems, and the first line people are knowledgeable and free enough to be able to respond to that need. And that provides you with the excellent, or provides the business with the excellent CX that they're looking for from IT. So give them the knowledge, give them the freedom. Don't ask them to follow a process that was perhaps written 2 years ago by someone who's far removed from the coalface. Allow people to respond in the moment. So it is what you're saying, yes.
It's interesting. There was it was probably about 6 months ago, I had an interaction with the customer service department, and it was about like setting up some camera and whatnot. And he responded back with something to the effect of, make sure the camera is 123 inches away. It was some goofy number, and I couldn't help but respond to him with, would you ever tell anyone that? Stop looking at your script and just tell me what I need to do, because it was so obvious that he was just reading whatever the script said and not actually interacting with me. And I mean, it just frustrated me to no end. I mean, it was, okay, it's it has to be about 3 feet away. Oh, okay, that's cool. I can do that. But don't tell me that it's 123 inches or whatever the number was. It was just it just frustrated me and gave me no confidence that he could actually, answer my questions.
Exactly. Sorry, Kirsty, I hope you don't mind that I'm kind of talking a lot. I am so passionate about this.
Yeah, I actually was pretty sure that this was what's going to happen, that you guys were just going to take off on me. One thing I'd like to say, Peter, I noticed on your sort of information that I've read about you around the place, you're really into the workplace psychology. So I guess that speciality has played in a lot to the way you've designed this approach.
Yeah, that's my academic background. I have my bachelor's degree and my postgraduate degree were both in psychology, and obviously the postgraduate was in work psychology. And I did my postgraduate degree after I had been working in IT. So I was looking.
That's actually very appropriate, Peter.
But I was looking for the answers. I'd done the whole ITSM stuff, and so while I was studying, I was looking for the answers to the things that frustrated me in the literature. and I was picking out the things that made sense. And there was a lot of reading that happened, and I kind of distilled what I thought were the answers into this trichromatic approach. So I got a lot of stuff from complexity theory. I got some stuff from a theory called socio-technical systems. I got stuff from a theory of motivation, a great theory of motivation called self-determination theory. And all of these had autonomy as a key driver to motivation, to kind of responsiveness and all the rest. And that's why autonomy came into the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, Peter, we actually mentioned in a previous podcast something along that line too. I think we can't remember who it was that brought up with Daniel Pink and the motivator not necessarily being financial, and really just once there's a sense of ownership and participation in the end result, people will do it. Barring some norms of reasonable financial, reasonable all the other factors. What really pushes people over the top is more so the sense of ownership and contribution to an end result that they believe in.
Yeah. And mastery, I think, was a big one.
Absolutely, 100%. Dan Pink, a lot of because he bases his talks on psychological theory, and a lot of the stuff he talks about is based on self-determination theory, which was my kind of specialist subject in academia. And it's a great theory of motivation. It's beyond extrinsic, just plain extrinsic and extrinsic. He talks about the motivation, or these theorists talk about the motivation for doing things that you don't necessarily like. There's a lot of work that you don't like, but the goal is to have people autonomously motivated. The problem with kind of extrinsic motivation, be it punishment or reward, is that as soon as you take away the person who's monitoring them, so if somebody says you'll be fired if you don't do X, Y, Z, or you'll get a bonus if you do X, Y, Z, if that person's not looking, if your boss is away, then you might not be doing the thing. The goal is autonomous motivation, so it's kind of internalized. It's to do with your values, to do with what you really want, and those are the things that drive you. And kind of that's why values is in the trichromatic model. Through the reading of self-determination theory, the second aspect of producing this autonomous motivation, in addition to autonomy, is values. And I'd like to give you a quick example from the real world, which I love to talk about. It's Google. Google, when they recruited in their early days, when they were recruiting staff, the method they went about it, so I have read, is large billboards in Silicon Valley with a maths problem. It wasn't branded as Google, it was just a maths problem on a billboard. Essentially, people would walk past, and some people would not be able to resist doing the maths problem. The answer to the maths problem was a website address. The website address linked to Google's recruitment page. So what they did was they found people who had some kind of values around maths. These were people for whom maths was important. It doesn't matter whether this was a job or whether this was just something to do, they did it. And the other aspect of Google is obviously the 20% time policy, which is quite famous, where they gave all staff in the early days 20% of their time free from management control. So you put those together, you find people with values who are motivated to do maths and solve problems, and you give them freedom. What are they going to do with that freedom? They're going to do the thing that they love doing. So that's kind of an example of that approach.
Yeah, it gets into the theory X versus theory Y. The theory X, I think, being extrinsic motivation, theory Y being intrinsic. That's kind of what a lot of what kicked this off, right, Peter?
Yeah. Well, the two theories, it was that the two theories are that some people think that people are intrinsically lazy and they need a kick to make them work. Other people think that you need to find their values, you need to find their kind of pleasure points, and once you find that, they'll go off and do the work. So those are the two theories, and people ascribe to each. Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion. Go ahead, Carl. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is there no in between? Because I could see some people that do need a kick in the butt, and then they actually excel.
And they do okay.
I mean that's something obviously we're not going to cover in the podcast, but it's I mean I guess just human behaviors is always an interesting twist.
It's a really good point, and it's not a point to be taken lightly, and that's why control is in the model. I debated this with an anarchist management theorist at a conference called All About Theory, All About People, and his idea was no, set people free. Freedom is the ideal state, but I was arguing that you need control. You're sometimes pushed in situations that you don't want to be in. But when you're in that situation, you realize that it was really great for you. So control is necessary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It's getting that balance right.
And that's
Exactly.
what trichromatic is all about.
Yeah, I just got done watching a podcast by Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble, who are a couple thought leaders in the Agile community. They do the annual Puppet Labs State of DevOps report, and they talk a lot about culture and use a model. I can't remember the name of the theorist, but it ranges. There's actually 3 different archetypes that they identify. One is the classic bureaucratic command and control, and then there's a middle ground that's a little more tolerant of individual autonomy, but is still very not ultimately as open and flexible as the most what they consider to be culturally advanced, where it's blameless and mistakes are seen as an opportunity to learn, and lateral communications without going up and over through your manager. Lateral communications are encouraged, not just tolerated, let alone actually forbidden, as they are in some organizations. I've had the misfortune of working in an organization like that once. So I think the culture piece is, and the interesting thing with what they're doing is they're quantifying this stuff. I mean, they have rigorous survey research, and they're starting to develop some interesting mathematical models even. And of course, you mentioned Google. They have recently put out some research on high-performing teams, where they identify the top 5 or 6 characteristics of the high-performing team. And I think you're smiling. Maybe you're familiar. You've seen this. Maybe part of the idea that psychological safety is perhaps one of the most critical determinants of a high-performing team. And then just to close, what they're also seeing is that in fact high-performing teams lead to business results. They lead to better stock prices. They lead to better sales. They lead to more satisfied customers. I mean, there's actual tangible results you can point to from this fluffy culture stuff. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, I think the big thing is it's you're using the term controls, Peter. I mean, it seems to be maybe a little bit softer and be more here's the boundaries and guidelines with which you can direct that energy and desire. I mean, going back quite a few years, aging myself a little bit. It's are you on the right bus? Are you in the right seat in the right bus? Do you need to get on a different bus? That sort of thing. I mean, that's how years ago it used to be kind of referred to. And a lot of people can be very good at certain things, but they're absolute failures at others. And whether it's because they're forcing that to pay the bills or whatever it is, it's as Kirsty said, it's really that balance. The artist who accepts the fact that, hey, I'm not going to make a living being an artist, but I want to be an artist, so I'll take the job. I won't complain because I know what the purpose of that is. That's to pay the rent, and then I'm going to do what I need to do so I have as much time available to paint and do whatever I want to do from an artistic perspective. And it's accepting that reality that maybe they're not going to be paying the bills with what they really love. But that's okay, and they've accepted it, rather than fighting it and being miserable on both ends of things.
Fantastic, yeah, and that's great also. And this is why I think human values is so often underrated in the organizational environment. And I'm not talking about company values. People always kind of get a little bit confused with company values. I'm talking about each person in the workplace has their own individual values. There's a research strand by someone called Shalom Schwartz, and it's great. It's all about values. He's done loads of studies in 30 different countries over a couple of decades, and he's got really good findings about human values. So, values are the things that get people out of bed in the morning. It might be because of their family, it might be because of duty, it might be for so many reasons, but you need to understand them. And if you understood people's values, then that point that you raised would help you understand whether that person should be in your autonomous kind of customer-facing, agile, flexible, innovative team, because it might be that person's not the right person to be in it.
Right, right.
But
And some people just frankly don't like a lot of,
background.
yeah, some people just frankly don't like not having the real structure and rigor of controls, and they don't feel comfortable in a loose kind of figure it out yourself kind of model. So I guess the key is, is finding those people that do want that, and it's funny, I just recalled an article I read not too long ago about tying your own personal values. So if you're, really into cancer research for children or whatever it is, and you do a lot of work in that space, this organization, what they did is they tied your actual work activities and goals and metrics to donations by the corporation to your charity or to your whatever. So you're like, okay, you know what? If I'm closing these tickets or I'm doing whatever I need to do, my company's going to give, a matching bonus, something like that, And I get, incentives are tricky, we all know that, but it seems like that's kind of where they were going. They're saying, hey, let's tie it to something that's interesting and important to you, not necessarily the organization. And it's
right.
The article said it was very successful in the case studies that they tried.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. I'm going to steal that one. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's all about motivation, isn't it? Yeah. We've gone over time as usual because this has been a really, really interesting chat. And I'm hoping, Peter, that we're planning to get the podcast to the UK at least once, maybe twice this year. So perhaps we'll be able to meet up in person and have another roundtable on some of your ideas, because they really do sound really interesting, and there's some great stuff in there. I've certainly been enjoying reading your blogs, and I'm going to keep on reading what you're putting out. So thanks a lot for your time today, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, Carlos, and thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Peter.
Kirsty.